Welcome to the 2021 Business for Peace Spotlight Series, Rethinking Systems of Decent Work. I hear it's a very nice day in Oslo as well as in Paris. It's a very sunny day, and I'm delighted to host you today for this workshop. Just a little bit of a small technical detail before starting. I want all participants to shut down their mics and their cameras in order for us to have a smooth internet connection and in order for you especially to see all the speakers we have gathered here today. So each May, Business for Peace hosts its annual summit, including the Pinnacle Business for Peace Award ceremony. However, due to the coronavirus pandemic, Business for Peace postponed their 2020 summit and decided to host an exciting new digital event series as a scaled-down version of usual events. In line with their vision to recognize, inspire, and accelerate business-worthy leadership, Business for Peace will continue to host valuable, impactful discussions about current global issues affecting sustainability and ethical business leadership. My name is Andrada Dugan, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this workshop on youth inclusion and participation with focus on SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth. I am the head of the Incubation and the Open Innovation Program of Urban Lab in Paris and Company, the Innovation and Economic Development Agency of Paris and its metropolis. The Urban Lab supports a vast ecosystem of actors around the challenges of the sustainable cities through several forms of expertise, a startup incubator, an urban experimentation laboratory, a trends observatory, as well as a support program for territorial development and social innovation. The aim of this last social innovation program, called l'Arc de l'Innovation, is to support vulnerable communities, public and private actors, associations, as well as individuals occupying the areas where these vulnerable communities are located. Among all the subjects this program operates on, we are also dealing with youth inclusion, education, professional insertion, and sometimes reintegration, in certain cases through urban ecology projects, employability, and so on and so forth. Those in the workforce under age of 30 are too often excluded from policy and decision-making processes. Sometimes they lack access to platforms through which they can articulate their concerns or affect meaningful change with a company. In many organizations, these platforms do not exist. Promoting youth inclusion is vital for socio-economic progress. These members of the workforce represent the future generation and will be affected long-term by the decision being made today. At the same time, they are generally highly innovative, socially and environmentally conscious, and at a stage where they are willing to learn, acquire skills, and gain an understanding of what steps are needed to create change. The exclusion of youth from central societal sectors can generate tremendous social and economic costs to societies, and youth unemployment can lead to social and political unrest. There are a lot of questions that I hope we will answer today, like how can youth create change in their communities? How should we remove barriers to youth entrepreneurship, and what are the main challenges they face? How can business in private sectors offer young employees a home to grow, and how public actors can involve them in the decision-making processes? In order to answer some of these questions, I am delighted to host today this workshop and to introduce you our speakers. I will start with Danat Tekie, who is a passionate young serial entrepreneur. She is one of the co-founders and the chief external relations of the global organization Young Sustainable Impact. Prior to this, Danat was part of developing the organization Future Leaders Global in the Nordics. She is passionate about leadership and making sustainability business as usual. Welcome, Danat. Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Next, Kamzy Gunaratnam is the deputy mayor of Oslo in her second term at 33 years old. She is running for the Norwegian parliament this fall. Kamzy is committed to political issues that contribute to more democracy, community involvement, and transparency. She wants to help enable more people to take part in the social debate and spends a lot of time getting input from the citizens of Oslo. She has recently launched a book in Norwegian entitled Your Struggle is My Struggle. I am very happy to have you here with us today, Kamzy. Hello, can you hear us?
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you.
Welcome. And last but not least, Marte Sølvsberg is a business advisor to the president and CEO in Orkla. Marte has worked in Orkla since 2007 in different roles, and recently she has been a project manager for one of Orkla's largest investments in existing food business ever. Hello, Marte. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, hello. Thank you.
So welcome, ladies. I'm delighted to host this 100% feminine panel and kick off our youth inclusion and participation workshop. So when we think of youth, we think of change, right? Young people are actors of change, especially in vulnerable communities. Kamzy, what change-making role should youth adopt in their communities? How can they create change?
I think it's pretty dependent on how the society is and what kind of chance gives them, and I think we need to think this, of the society as whole. Like we can, and I will brag about how Norway has encouraged youth to both, be in political youth parties. To, I'm very proud of Norway as, by law, all municipalities have to have a youth council, and the council need to be consulted with regarding all issues about children and youth. So I think Norway, it's far ahead compared to the rest of the world when it comes to, even parliamentarians. I think we have one of the youngest parliaments in the world. So I'm proud of that. At the same time, now I'm questioning that maybe a lot of the youth who are already engaging are from privileged families and from privileged areas, for example, in Oslo, and that we need more incentives to get the youth engaged despite their social backgrounds. Now, I think that in Norway and especially in Oslo, from the vulnerable areas, I think that one of the most important things is to give them tools on other parts of their lives too, like a part-time job, like when you recruit people into, for example, the school council, for example, then you always recruit either one of the most popular kids or those kids who are, used to discuss politics around their dinner table. Not all people are. Then how can we give them the benefit, without having it from home? So I think that I think we can do a lot. But if you want more democracy, we need to give them tools on different levels. And I think that stimulating them in activities and, hearing their opinions more active would be one of the things we should do.
Thank you, Kamzy. So young people nowadays face many challenges, right? Among which we can obviously talk about being included in the decision-making process, both at private and public levels. So Danat, what are these challenges these young people face when they want to get involved in the decision-making processes, like generally speaking, at both levels, public and private?
I think, thank you for the question. And I think from my perspective, the experiences that we've gained a couple of years that we've been working with is that we're talking more and more now about youth being a driving force, youth being important to make change, while a lot of the big decisions that are going to affect the young people aren't being made with them. And we're talking about the importance of youth inclusion, while I actually would challenge that and say that it's not really happening in the right rooms. So you may have, oh, it's very nice to have you young people involved and we'll listen and very, very good. And then we'll go to the other room that's the right decisions are happening. And I think in my perspective that youth is not to the certain degree that it should be considered as an as important stakeholder as one that is more established, looking at what young people and with respect what they have to bring to the table. And you can always argue, there's the lack of experience that you've had, but then there are also a significant part of society. A lot of societies today consist of above 50% or 30% of a young population. A lot of countries are young population with the average age of 15. And we also have the largest youth population in the world in history, 1.8 billion young people. And so they are also a very important stakeholder that is affecting society with expectations. They're affecting the economy with the changes and the decisions they're making. But I also think it's important to think about when we often ask, what does youth think about, is also important with the huge number that young people are. It's not a homogeneous group. And so there are a lot of young people that acknowledge, climate change and that we need to make change, but there are also a lot of young people that doesn't care. And there are a lot of young people that are not engaged. But I do think that it's what we've seen in YSI, we see a lot of young people that want to be part of the change. And I think that's maybe a new thing about young people now, is that they want to work with something that's purposeful. They want to be included. When they come in to work with whatever, they don't want to bring coffee and write, notes. They want to be part of the process where you're creating and where you're utilizing what young people have to bring to the table. But very often you can come in and say, hey, we want to have you because you're a very valuable asset, but then you're going to work in Windows 1998. Very banal example, but so I think we have a very far way to go with youth inclusion on a serious note, where young people is included as a serious stakeholder. But I think we are moving in that direction, and there's a lot of focus. And I think we're also seeing that if the word is not given to young people, they are they're taking the world, they're taking the word. And we're seeing that with, for example, the climate strikes with schools. Greta Thunberg started alone, and then a year after you saw the movement that she created around the world. And so I think it's coming, but I think we have a long way to go still.
Kamzy, I see you nodding. I started this discussion by giving an example of a program in Paris, and I've done recently a benchmark on all the social innovation initiatives, at least in Europe. And there are a lot of associations and a lot of municipalities that try to involve more and more people, and especially young people, in the decision-making processes. And I'm wondering, how is this happening in Norway? And do you have some examples maybe to give in Norway and maybe in other countries, if you have any idea of what is happening around Norway as well?
I think I mentioned a couple of it. I was nodding so much to Danat because we need to be critical about, I think that even though we're far ahead compared to other countries, that we still have a way to go in Norway and Oslo. I think the most important and the beautiful part is that by law, you need to have a youth council in every municipality, and every issue considering children and youth have to be consulted with that council. And that is amazing, because you need to listen to youth and kids, and it's regarding them. It's about them, and they're going to live with the consequences far longer than what we're going to do. At the same time, I'm also questioning the kids and the youth in the room. Now, Danat was talking about whether or not youth are in the decision-making rooms, all of them, and I agree. At the same time, which youth, what part of Oslo is represented is also a democratic question. Like, if you're lacking women, then we're lacking in democracy. And at the same time, if we're lacking some part of women, like minority women, for example, we're lacking in democracy. In the same way, I'm proud that the youth are extending their voices and they're bringing into the rooms, but I'm also questioning whether all youth are represented and that all youth are feeling that they're in the room. So I think one of the things I'm very proud of is the youth councils. It's by law. I think that's something every country should do, that you need to have youth council, and they need to be elected by the youth who engage in the cities. And another thing is that I can tell that this is also important for the political parties. Now, when I came to enter the city council in 2007, I was 19 years old, and I think the next person was like 10 or 15 years older than me. It was like it was different. It was weird. Like, everyone else talked differently. They were engaging in different issues than I did. Today, we have like every party in the city council of Oslo have someone in their 20s. It's beautiful, which makes the debate different. The issues that are being raised in the city council is different. So I think that like the businesses and the corporate are seeing that they need to be more diverse, they need to include youth. I think also the political parties are seeing that. Gro Harlem Brundtland, our former female prime minister, said that women are half the people, they should be half the power. And it's the same thing with youth. If you're part of the people, then you should also be part of the power. Otherwise, we will not be representing the whole population.
And how do you encourage youth from vulnerable communities to take part in these actions?
We have this certain program called, for example, Groruddalssatsingen. It's in Groruddalen, which is the upper east part of Oslo. Groruddalen have had like different social issues throughout many years. So one of the things we've been doing is to, through city planning, making the areas better, the common areas better, making sure that kids get into kindergarten, etc. But one of the things that I think is very awesome they did is that they made this a Norwegian call Ung Medbestemmelse, which is about youth getting involved in decision-making processes. So what we see is that if your parents don't speak about politics around the dinner table, then you are equipped with, less skills to debate in the school area and other social areas. So what can we give to those kids? Yes, we need to school them in like basic stuff like freedom of speech, like how do you speak up your issue? How do you debate? How do you disagree when it's sensitive? All those basic stuff that we learn throughout dinner tables with our parents. Not all kids have that. So one of the things I'm very proud of is what we do through this engagement in Groruddalssatsingen, where kids from Groruddalen gets that through school and through their youth council locally.
That's very, very interesting. So we've talked a lot about the public level, but I would also like to focus on the private sector. So Marte, I was wondering, how can businesses in private sector offer young employees a home to grow so that they can reach to these high-level decision-making processes inside large organizations like Orkla, for example?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think it starts with kind of the offering of a job and a chance to contribute. And with this, as we've talked about, and Kamzy and Danat have mentioned that youth, they're very different, to different motivations, different skills. And so you also, as an employer, you need to give them different opportunities, both from unskilled, like factory workers, more on-the-job training, to traineeships, both for blue collar, white collars, but also kind of the work where, or jobs where you need a master's or a bachelor's degree to get there. So kind of you need the range to get all the youth in there. And then one thing is offering them a job, but second is also making them grow in that position, both kind of business wise, of course, but also when it comes to a personal level. And I think, as Danat mentioned, that the younger generation now is even more purpose driven than we've seen before, and that goes kind of when they choose an employer, and they're more into, they look at their values, they want to align with the values, maybe their sustainability agenda or other topics that they care highly about, that they really feel like they want to find an employer that they can feel aligned with. So that's also for companies to work with that, and kind of what is their standpoint and their employer brand, which is a word that has been more and more important recently, that they also need to kind of, what is it that, what are our values and what is that we stand for, and also when it comes to sustainability and other topics. So that comes, yeah, sorry.
Sure, sorry, go on.
No, but yeah, ask your question, please. Yeah.
When we were preparing for this workshop, you mentioned something about the Junior Advisory Board of Orkla. What is it, and how do you work with youth in this kind of initiative?
No, because what we see is that, like you've been mentioning, that we get the younger generation in. We have a lot of young employees in our company, but the executive board and kind of the management teams, they are older than 30 years old mostly. So kind of, how do you get that connection? How do you get the insights and the comments and the kind of the challenging and stuff also from the younger generation? And then was one good initiative that we started last year, which is we have chosen to call it the Junior Advisory Board, which is a board of 14 members from all around Orkla in different countries, different genders, and they're really talented and really engaged group of young employees. And we started this last fall, and we gave them kind of a blank canvas as to, you are a junior board. How do you want to come across with our opinions? What topics do you feel, do you care about? What do you want to kind of give to our CEO and president as to what do you want to contribute with? And we see that the first topic that they chose was sustainability, and they really care about sustainability, and they did perfect work in beforehand and involves a lot of the organization, and come across with kind of the viewpoints, and really challenged how we see sustainability in our organization and how they want us to change that and even make it even more important. So that was really good to see how they kind of choose a topic that with their passion and want to make an effort.
And is this Junior Advisory Board a common initiative in large corporations, or are you, let's say, an actor that opens the door to this kind of initiative for other large businesses?
We're not first movers in this. We're not. I know other companies have done this before us, but I don't know any of them. I've not spoken to them. But so I think kind of to companies close to us, I've not seen it. But for us now, we've done this for 6 months or so, so it's still a fresh thing. But we see that this is really something we want to continue, and we see our president and CEO. He really likes this initiative and is a big supporter of it. And it's unique for him also to have this established link to the youth panel like this. And they are brave in their mindset, and they dare to challenge and we can test ideas on them. We have challenges or dilemmas that we give to them to have their feedback. So both big and small topics, they are used in more and more situations now that we want them as a sounding board.
That's a very interesting inclusion kind of a project that I think all corporations should think of. Sorry, there are a few redecorating actions in my neighbor's apartment, so I'm very sorry for that. So thank you, Marte, for this. Starting high school, you start wondering what will your professional path look like? Will you choose a corporation? Will you be an entrepreneur? How can you become one if this idea appeals you? And I would like to talk about some initiatives. For example, in Paris, the agency I'm working for has launched a few years ago a movement called Option Innovation, so the innovation option, right? And it's a 4 days open doors event while high school students can visit incubators, startups, and our corporate partners. The aim of this yearly now national event is to raise awareness of emerging professions in innovative companies and what the entrepreneurship world looks like. Each year, we are now gathering more than 20,000 young people that attend this event. And I am wondering, in Norway, Danat, how do you remove barriers to young people for entrepreneurship, and what are the main challenges for them when they decide to follow this path?
So I think coming from how we've been working in YSI, it's been a very global audience and participation more than specific focus on a region, because I think what I see is there's a certain level of difference in how we approach opportunities that are given. In Norway, we're very lucky to have an abundance of opportunities where we are approached very often. If you look to schools, they come to students before they're even done and offer them jobs, right? While in other countries, they are competing for the same opportunities. We see that with applications that we get with from over 10,000 people every year. They come with these impressive resumes of what they've done at the age of 23. But they come to us, they have alerts for opportunities coming their way. And I think that is sort of the people that we're competing with in a global context, also with global increase in globalization. But I think one thing that we're doing to focus on the barriers, because there's a lot of barriers, and one of them is sort of course, insufficient experience and knowledge on a couple of areas that you need to be an entrepreneur. Another thing is the lack of an access to funding, the access to platforms. Very often, especially maybe in the entrepreneurship world where I work, if you look at accelerators, they often take in, the average participant is 40 years, has 20 years of corporate experience. Young people has not lived long enough to have that, right? We're not competing on the same playing fields to even get in, because that are the metrics that are being looked into. How long have you worked with this? And so I think in what we're doing, Wise, we're sort of trying to fill that very space of having a designated place for young people that are very often left out. And so I think that's also very evident in the results, in, you know, so many people that are applying, that wants to be part of this, that wants to have that opportunity. And so you have different barriers, you know, as I mentioned, insufficient knowledge, lack of funding, lack of platforms to do this. And also, I think, wanting to go a bit back to what you actually touched on, is very often when it comes to working with youth entrepreneurship, it's let's have a 2-day ideathon. We know that that creates engagement, but do it create what we actually need of proper young entrepreneurship? And I think it's important to differ between, you definitely need to focus on sort of creating that spirit that and I think in Norway we are sort of maybe behind a lot of countries, because a lot of countries have the innovation culture. If you're a young person growing up in the US, you're driven by, you know, creating stuff, while in Norway we can live a very comfortable life. It's not until a couple of years ago that it was looked at negatively if you were an entrepreneur. While now it's very interesting, it's very hip, it's in the culture. So I think it comes with culture, it comes with bringing and fostering that culture, that spirit. And we have that in youth, in high schools in Norway. You can take subjects as entrepreneurship when you're in the second andre videregående. And then when you start to study, you can have student businesses as also another opportunity. So there are opportunities in that, like in all the level. And of course, but more of sort of besides outside the academics, you really have to start for yourself. And I feel like we're maybe an answer there, a platform for young people to be seen, to get the space where they're taken seriously, to create entrepreneurship that is driven by young talent. And you don't need to look back. If you look at a lot of established entrepreneurs today, they started as young people. If you look into the more digitized world, Zuckerberg started when he was 17. If you look into very industrial Norway, we have a very pride in, for example, Yara. Christian Eide started with his first research papers when he was 18. So I think it's important to remember that youth has been a driving force all along. And in the barriers, we have to look to, you know, how can we really empower young people to be able to solve this in serious attempts that are not just one day. They need the time. They need, okay, we see that because we're taking young people from no idea, no team. But what happens when they're done with us and they've gotten that starting point? Who takes them on to the next level? And the next level, who gives them that small funding? You say, oh no, but we need, you know, to see a lot of traction, a lot of customers, but, you know, how can we help you in that sort of from step 1 to 2? So it's about like the ecosystem. And we also have something called Ungt Entreprenørskap, youth entrepreneurship in Norway, which is also another organization. So there are offers, but it's about sort of showing what's there, also talking about what can become better, and talking about, you know, the notion of the sort of the seriousness of aspect, putting in the necessary funding, putting in the necessary structures that you would put for anyone else, that is sort of more looked at as the right type and the right fit. And I just wanted to also touch on what was in the comment field about the intergenerational aspect here, working between, you know, the 2 generations, or working between youth and the more established corporations. And we have a very strong belief in, yes, youth people are a driving force, but we have to also work with the ones that are affecting our society today, which are the established corporations. And we need to work together. It's not about young people coming in and pushing out the more established generations or corporations and it's not like the room is only fit for one or the other, but it's about having a table where both are represented, where both are working together on challenges. And we really strive to do that by connecting and being sort of that middle spot for businesses to work together with young people on problem statements or issues connected to sustainability and innovation, and working together. And we've had amazing partnerships with big corporates in Norway internationally, that has had a lot of good bearing fruits. So then we need to look into, you know, what are we doing in our core business, because that's what matters at the end of the day for what you deliver on, and how can we plug in young people to what matters, and not on sort of the nice engagement things that creates buzz but really doesn't lead to anything. So yeah,
that's very interesting. We have some questions from the audience that I think will address the three of you. So if you've spoke about platforms, you've spoken about how we can co-create an environment that is somehow open to all these actors and that encourages them to work together. We have a question, however, maybe focused more on immigrants and local communities. How do we create platforms that can help these young people to collaborate with corporations, with political decision makers, and how can we create a proper environment for them to develop themselves and become entrepreneurs, for example? It's an open question, so please answer as you wish, in the order that you wish.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
To all the great things that Danat said. I think that it's as politicians, we have responsibility for to create platforms for the different stakeholders. An example today, it's Oslo Science City, where we're trying to make this triangle between the students, the research, and the businesses. I think stuff like that will be more and more important, and it is a political responsibility to make sure that those platforms exist and put in the demands to who should be active part in this. Another thing I want to say is that for many years now, we've been struggling to educate skilled workers like plumbers, electricians, etc. in Oslo. And one of the reasons is that we don't introduce these professions early in the school. We introduce them like when they get to 10th grade, like when you're supposed to choose what kind of direction you should go in. And the same with the entrepreneurship. Like I love Ungt Entreprenørskap. They do a great job. I think they should be introduced much earlier in school to give kids, to give youth the culture of innovation. It's not just going to happen. You need to introduce these stakeholders that can do that job earlier in the school, I think.
Thank you, Kamzy. Marte, can you evaluate this from the perspective of a corporation, maybe?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's kind of how you get the youth just employed and engaged with them, and also kind of make them grow within the company. And it's actually one thing we had a few weeks back when the junior board had a topic with it more into kind of social responsibility, and we also see that that's also something that's coming more and more important, and they want to have that as a part of their job. It's not kind of just being employed, getting a salary and a safe job. It's more about, as we said, purpose driven. They want work and their employer to be more than just that job. They want to kind of, if they can engage in society or kind of do more in this as well, that's more recent than we've seen before, and also something that we wanted to do something about, and it's also this huge potential in this area, definitely. And we also, when it comes to kind of more concrete actions on this, every summer we have summer interns, students coming in, and even if, or maybe they choose their topic, or we have a topic that we want to have solved or kind of input during the summer. And these are all good arenas to both for the students to get to know a company and a working life, but also for us to get valuable input on topics like this. So we see that to engage with students and others kind of short-term or permanent employment, it's important for us to get different inputs.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will take a last question from the audience, if there is any. Unless you guys would like to add something else.
I just had a comment while
Yes,
while
please.
waiting for anyone to add a question. I just wanted to follow up on like an example of what you see of what Orkla is doing is they're structurally putting in structures for young people to be involved, right? They're establishing a structure that is not dependent on Marte that suddenly cares about young people, because we don't want the initiatives to be driven by who is there and dependent on me caring, because what do we do then if I get changed and I don't care anymore? We need those structures that are working with sort of youth entrepreneurship, youth inclusion and participation structurally, so that it's systemic, so that it's dependent on, you know, that this happens, that we can evaluate, that we can become better, that it's not just an initiative from one year to another. You know, if it's about, Marta's been talking about, you know, them as an employer, because we're also facing a lot of challenges with youth unemployment. And I remember a speech back a couple of years ago from the Pakistani former ambassador to Norway. She said, every year we have 140,000 engineers coming out. We can't create 140,000 new jobs every year for these students. So we need entrepreneurship to be able to create workspaces. And so going back to, you know, fostering that culture from a young age, entrepreneurship is not just something that's, you know, for the few, or that is not like that has a big part. It is inevitable and important for the employment, for decent economic growth, for society to work with inequality, and so forth and so forth. And so I think working with those systemic things, you know, having maybe in the structure how you work with recruitment, right? What we should have an institution like number that this % of our staff needs to be this number. Or you can also go to examples of how in Norway, at least, how we will work with the inclusion of women into boards. Every board need to have one female in their board, and we've seen the increase of that. And there was an article saying in one of the Norwegian newspapers lately that we have more people above the age of 80 than below the age of 30 in Norwegian boards for ASA companies, which says something about, I don't know, it makes you doubt how future fit there are. I'm not saying that if you're 80, you're not sort of part of society, but that says something about the future and how you're working sort of on transferring the relay baton for people that are going to take over. Because you also need to, I'm very fortunate to be, for example, in a couple of boards, and you need to also, as Kamzy was saying, build that experience, you know, to be able to take over and take on the next batch that is coming, and not just suddenly be put into it. So I think it's also about how we work with this structurally and systemically, going back to the culture, going back to how you, now maybe you're starting to idolize, right? People that are creating, people want to create the success stories, and then sharing how that's done. And yeah, I see they had a last question come in now.
It seems so. How do we create an environment of exchange of best entrepreneurial skills globally? Very good question.
We're actually launching, we're part of I think it's one of the biggest studies on youth entrepreneurship. It's a collaboration with lots of organizations focusing on youth entrepreneurship. So we're involved, Changemaker, Ashoka, many different organizations. It's a report being launched in June. I don't remember the exact date, but we've been doing a study for the last 6 months, organizing info from the organizations, the members of the organizations and their networks, to cover really what are the barriers, what are the access points, how can you create these networks. We see, especially at least with how we work in YSI, that when we gather and build teams, they normally consist of young people from all around the world working together with complementary skills where they fit each other and they work across. And so there are lots of opportunities for young people there. I think a lot of them are not known, maybe by many, but there are also a lot of opportunity web pages. That's how a lot of people have found us, is web pages that highlight opportunities. Yeah. So I think
to answer the last question, check the web page. Okay, well, thank you very much for all these insights. Thank you, ladies. I'm afraid we will have to stop our discussion here, as well as the live, and go on with the second part of this workshop, which is the breakout session with those of you who registered for it. So thank you all for attending this 45 minutes dedicated to youth inclusion and participation.